We have covered previously the story of the Sons of Tuireann, an Irish myth, and here we'll be exploring further some of the symbolism involved in the mythological tale. The central character in this tale is Lugh of the Long Hand, or Lugh Lá Bhada, as it is in Irish, meaning long hand, or metaphorically, Lugh of the long reach, Lugh of the widespread influence, Lugh of boundless jurisdiction, perhaps. The name Lugh is said, or Lugh, L-U-G-H, is said to be derived from an Indo-European root, Lugh, L-E-W-G-H, meaning to bind by oath. So we have Lugh Lá Bhada, Lugh of the wide influence, far-reaching jurisdiction, and that being coupled with a word meaning to bind by oath. So a far-reaching, influential oath, or a binding by oath. And in this regard, it could be the span of Ireland. Lugh, of course, is seen to be a Celtic deity or a character, a hero of Irish mythology. And so we are grounded in this man of high esteem, high regard, far-reaching influence, based fundamentally in oaths. The tale of the Sons of Tuireann hints at this, as Lugh seeks the assistance of Nuada, the king, upon hearing that the Fomorians have landed in Ireland and had spoiled the land of Boh of Darrig, the Red Crow, or the Blood Raven. Nuada, however, rejects Lugh's plea for assistance, as the attack was not made on Nuada himself, meaning Nuada's direct tribe were not affected. Lugh was not pleased with this, and perhaps recognizing that this occasion was an attack from those foreign to Éire, and so the laws and customs typically, the oaths which applied between Irish tribes, were perhaps not needed now, or there was a more widely acknowledged oath that in this instance would supersede regular tribal oaths. In this, Lugh demonstrates that his duty was not solely to one tribe, but to the whole of Ireland. And it was not that Nuada had wronged anybody, but that his stance was a localized one, showing little allegiance to other kings of other tribes, even in the face of a foreign force attacking Éire. Lugh, however, was not of this persuasion, and so he rode out of Tara in County Meath and headed westward. Let us pause for a second to explore a little bit about Meath, where Tara is. We see that the County Meath, M-E-A-T-H, is a central territory where the Ardrí resided. This is Irish for the High King. This territory was exempt from the laws and taxes of other territorial princes or kings or heads of tribes. But what of its name? A quote from Alvin Boyd Coombe will serve to contextualize what I will say next. On speaking of the ancient system of place naming, Coombe said, quote, "It is said that the names and localities were derived from the features of an original uranograph, or chart of the heavens." End quote. This evokes the maxim of as above, so below, and as within, so without. As the centre of the country, we can recognise Meath, or Mead, M-I-F-A-D, as the middle or central. Meath seems to be at the heart of Ireland. So we can recognise, by analogy, that our equivalent would be the heart in our bodies. Meath is at the centre of Ireland. Meath, even in its name, M-I-D, middle is M-I-D-D-L-E, the central or the middle point, the middle path perhaps. Meath is the centre where the first fire of the new year was lit, and from which all others took their flame, according to Geoffrey Keating. So Lugh, The far-reaching oath strides out to battle foreign invasions from Meath, from the centre, from the heart. If we are looking at this psychologically, we have a threat external to us, and the impetus in us, or the desire or the instinct in us to go and meet that force, here represented or named Lugh, leaves us from our centre, from our heart, from our very core. That is where the courage comes to go and face an enemy. So Lugh rides westward. And let us remember that it is in the west where the sun goes to die every evening, and to be reborn in the east on the following day. Thus, the west became synonymous with the land of the dead, where all things go to wither and die, darkness, the underworld cycle, hell even. Lugh heads that way. This westward path where the sun is swallowed by the waters, the Atlantic Ocean, which is always at the west of Ireland. This is the domain of the King Lear. We find in the analytical psychology of Carl Jung, who was attempting to make sense of this ancient form of sharing wisdom, i.e. mythology, that the waters are tied to the emotional world. The emotions are related to the waters in you and I, which are said to be deeply associated with the moon. The moon, of course, is said to dominate the tides of the waters on the earth. The 28 days of the cycle of a moon are also linked with the cycle of the female, the menstrual cycle, the cycle of blood and waters. Back to the story. Lugh rides out west to the land of the dead, where the sun, or the morning and evening star, goes to die each day. He then meets his father, Cian, whose name means the ancient or the enduring, one who persists. So we have Lugh, who comes from Cian. He's the father of Cian. Cian, the ancient or enduring one, results in Lugh, which is a far-reaching ancient oath. And of course, as is the beauty with mythology, we're free to see Cian as a literal father, or of a personification of one's ancestors, in this case, Lugh's ancestors. Cian is with his brothers. Brothers are related directly to each other, and so we're dealing with aspects directly related to Lugh, long-standing binding oaths, and Cian, ancient enduring oaths. Fascinating. Are we speaking of an ancient oath that the Irish would unite to fight foreign incursions? So you have Nuada, who is sold or said to be the original king of the Tuireann. We have Lugh, who's the master of all things, the multi-skilled god, or the multi-skilled hero. New ways, new abilities. So when Ireland is attacked by the Fomorians, Nuada says that because he wasn't attacked directly, he will not go and meet that challenge. Lugh is going to meet that challenge. Lugh is also said to be meaning of an oath. So is there an ancient Irish far-reaching oath that suggests that if Ireland itself is attacked by foreign forces, that it must unite? It must go and meet them in the land of the dead out west. Psychologically then, we have Meath, which is symbolic of the heart in us, the central point where kings reside. Is the heart also the primary source or the foundation of our binding oaths with ourselves, where any attack made against us must require the uniting of all of our strengths to combat it? Cian's two brothers are called Cu and Ceathain. Cu, the prefix to Cuchulainn, means the hound or the dog. When we speak of dogs, we are immediately introduced to loyalty, unconditional love, and companionship. Kehen seems to be a harder name to gather the meaning of. The search refers us back to the legendary uncle of Lugh, a self-referential term. Kehen is also a Welsh boy's name, meaning dark or ruddy. Dark may be confused with black, although this need not be the case, for if we accept the average look of the Irish, a tanned person would be considered dark-skinned. So what are we looking at? We see that Lugh sets out to battle invading forces, backed by loyalty and legendary, ancient and enduring oaths. Where we meet a very interesting turn is when we find that these three, Cian, Cu and Kehen, are the sons of Caint. To be a Caint, to be speaking. The word Caint in Irish means speech, talk, to be saying something. No be a Caint, don't be speaking. So putting together Lugh, Cian, Cu, Kehen and Caint, we have an ancient, enduring, far-reaching oath of loyalty, which comes from the speech or the oral tradition of Ireland. Cainta has also been called Dín Chet, who shows himself to be the healing element of the Irish psyche, or God, if you will. Dín Chet, or Caint, healed all wounds by drowning the ill in his well and reviving them. We are reminded here of Bel or Baal or Belenus, where the initiate would be drowned in a cauldron to be revived or resuscitated again. There's the element of sacrificing in a part of yourself in the rite. We've met this ritual before. This is your pre-Roman, pre-Catholic Irish baptism. The well is highly revered in Irish mythology and folklore, and persisting to such a degree in the minds of the Irish people that the Roman cult had to overlay their saints' names onto such sacred wells. St. Patrick's Well in Clonmel is a good example of this. Speaking of wells, William Butler Yeats spoke of them being full of the waters of emotion and passion in which all purified souls are entangled. We're introduced to waters again. The psychological meaning of these, or association of them, being the emotional world. It's interesting that the poet here seems to identify that. The waters with emotion, passion, purified souls, plural, where they're entangled, a sort of collective unconscious, ancestral memory, racial heritage is being spoken of here. We also have the healer, Dín Chet, being coupled with speech, with his other name or other personification being Caint. But what was being said? What sort of speech? Were these healing words, a healing tale, a story of creation perhaps, the truth of the minds of man? Is this what we're getting at? Perhaps these and many other things, perhaps that can be given a home in the word tradition. Words were handed down. Speech, spoken tradition, oral tradition. For its ills and amazing wills, the history of your race, your family, you, is being told to you. Or perhaps you feel this, see this in some intoxicated vision, which tends to leave significant change in people. You can speak of ayahuasca here and the reviews or the stories that people retell following some sort of trip. Whatever the experience, the functions of speech and healing are here combined. So storytelling, or should we simply call it the recollection and telling, or perhaps an acting out of a race's history. The deeds of a man's father and his father, this was elevated to the level of life and death, for it was the restoration of life to a man. For the plunging of the ill into the well was to introduce a man to his nature, to his family name, perhaps to his tribal history, to the epigenetical patterns that have been handed down generation to generation, the sort of struggles he may hope to expect and to encounter in his life based on the lives of his father and on, and also the unlived life of his father. The regrets that he might have will now be echoed in the events of the son's life. This may grant the man purpose, where he knows his role and he becomes accepting of his duty to himself, to his family, and also to his race or to his country, as Lugh seems to have taken the challenge. Or at least that is what the stories show us. I will repeat myself here, as is worth mentioning a second time, and perhaps a third, that in Caint, Cian, Cu, Ceann, we have to speak, to heal, healing words, ancient, enduring, healing words that speak of relationship between males in this story, loyalty. And we have Lugh Lovada, Lugh of the long hand, or the vast influence, and part of his tale orients around holding oaths and seeking justice and attaining justice. Also a sense of duty to the defence of Ireland. So Cu, Cian, Ceann, they agree to go to battle with Lugh. But as they depart, Cian sets off in another direction. And as he travels across the plains, he's spotted by three men. He also spots these three men. Cian recognizes that these men be enemies, so he decides to use a druid's wand to turn himself into a pig in the hopes of hiding amongst the pigs that are nearby. These three men, however, see Cian perform this magic. These three men are the sons of Tuireann. Tuireann is the Irish equivalent of the Celtic god Tuireann, who is said to be the creator in its present tense form, its present tense aspect. There's an element of time being spoken of here, the present tense. Tuireann or Tuireann is also a storm god. You'll see later that in this story, the three sons of Tuireann swear an oath to the god of the air, the sky, weather. So the storm god, this Irish storm god, Celtic storm god, is directly related to Yahweh in the Judeo-Christian theology, where Yahweh is a storm god, appears in storms, manifests in storms, is related to storms. But he's also related to the present tense, because when he meets Moses, he is asked who he is, and he says, I am that I am. Speaking twice in the one sentence of am, which is locked into the present tense. I am that I am. I am the God of the present tense. You're dealing with an aspect of time here. What is interesting is that Yahweh is the Jewish God, the Judaic God, and he is the God of the book, the Bible, for the Christians also, who revere the book as the word of God, the written word of God. So you have a total contrast. With Cian and his family, including Lugh, you have ancient, enduring, healing words from the past, contrasted with Tuireann and his three sons, who are related to Yahweh, the book, the written word, the present tense. You've two clashing elements of time, the past and the present. Another interesting factor involved in this is that Tuireann is related to Ogma. Ogma is his father, grandfather, an ancestor of his. The lineage runs through both of them. Ogma, similar to Kaint, represents speaking or communication, but perhaps different types. From their fruits ye shall know them. Kaint produced Keen, who produced Lugh, who honours oaths and justice above all. Truth. Ogma, however, has been depicted with people bound to his tongue, seemingly as they follow their master. The tongue implies speech, and being bound to another's is to be falling for their words, to be seduced, self-imposed, spellbound. This following another's vision is deception, not truth, but deception, manipulation, and control. So Ogma, in contrast to Kaint, results in what could be seen as a darker side of communication. Interestingly, Ogma is also claimed as the creator of Ogam, however you wish to pronounce it, which is an Irish written script whose age we are simply unsure of. So between Ogma and his line and Kaint and his, we are seeing the word as written against the word as spoken. Documented history versus the oral recounting of history. History perhaps versus mythology. Is there a difference between history and mythology? Can both be explaining the same event and be correct? To answer this question, a wander through some modern neuroscience and hemispheric differences of the brain might be useful. For this, I'm going to quote from the book The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World by Ian McGilchrist. He says, quote, "What is more, now that we know more about the functioning of our own brains, we know that it is not actually true that language is subserved by one hemisphere. Its functioning is distributed across the two. If it is true that most syntax and vocabulary, the nitty-gritty of language, are in most subjects housed in the left hemisphere, it is nonetheless the right hemisphere which subserves higher linguistic functions, such as understanding the meaning of a whole phrase or sentence in context, its tone, its emotional, its significance, along with use of humor, irony, metaphor, and so on. But if it is the right hemisphere that, in linguistic terms, paints the picture, it is still the left hemisphere that holds the paint box." End quote. He adds, "Language is the province of both hemispheres and, like everything else, has different meanings in either hemisphere. Each uses it differently, and different aspects of it stand out in the use that either hemisphere makes of it." We learn that the left brain's way of decoding or deciphering the world, it's interesting the words there, so there's the negative prefix on both of them, to decode, to decipher, to dismantle, that sort of a thing. But the left brain's method is to break down things into pieces. It builds knowledge bit by bit, like the squares of a Lego, the parts of a jigsaw, piece by piece. It sees all aspects as individual and separate. Its attitude towards things, animals, and people is one would have towards a tool, seeing it as an object. The left brain creates the worldview of objects, where things are simply that, things. It is the world of the known, the understood, the categorized. You can see that being prevalent in society at the moment. All unity is stripped and separated by the use of words, labels, and concepts. This is not to be faulted, as it is through this engaging with reality that allows us to create some space between ourselves and the environment. It allows a self to be recognized, thought about, understood, at least in terms of seeing that self as an object. Contrasting this is the world or lens of the right hemisphere. We understand this hemisphere to interact with language via a symbolic, implicit, or metaphorical dance, where subtlety, sarcasm is used, the realm of poetry. It is deeply grounded in the body and the life that we feel from and in our nervous system. The body, of course, is the physical vessel which, by carrying it, is in direct contact with the emotions and our emotional world, the waters of our body. We see that Lugh was heading west to the waters of the west, again waters being emotion. The sons of Tuireann swear an oath to the god of the air. Air is synonymous with intellect in certain traditions, intellect being rational thought, the air over the water, the yellow over the blue, rational thought over emotional felt sense. And I will leave this here, as this is a deeply interesting point for all to stop on, to ponder and to wrestle with. Namely, what is our relationship like with the different worlds we are constantly engaged in creating, based on the innate structure of our very brain? Perhaps the story of the sons of Tuireann is not just an old Irish myth of a warrior seeking revenge after tragedy strikes. Perhaps it is the story of each one of us who must leave our centres when danger and chaos reach our shores, where we must develop a relationship with our ancestors in order to understand what it means to be honourable. In order to be capable in the present, we must navigate the deep waters of our ancestral and emotional life, where we overcome the failings of our fathers and we allow their triumphs to flow through us so that we can become masters of our own present, or something like that.